Everybody's talking about the NFL's new kickoff rule and what things are going to look like. Well, Kyle and I are going to tell you what we would do today on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast.
You are Locked On NFL Scouting with the Draft Dudes, your daily podcast for NFL and college football scouting. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's better than this? It's guys being dudes here on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast. We're the Draft Dudes. I'm Joe Marino from Locked On Bills. He's Kyle Krabs from Locked On Dolphins. And we are your NFL experts here with you daily to talk team building across the league on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast with the Draft Dudes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Want to issue a big thank you, shout out, and welcome to our everydayers. Those of you who never miss a single episode, we appreciate y'all being here very, very much. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates that you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply.
Joe, happy Bruce Feldman Freaks List release to you. Came out yesterday. I don't know if you had a chance to look at it yet, but I know it's one of our favorite times of year to kind of dig through some of the athletic numbers there for Bruce Feldman and the college football freaks.
I perused it. And of course, I am 100% clicking on every single weightlifting video that I can.
Yep.
And the dude that did 10 reps of 605 on squat, my Lord, is that insane? 10?
A lot of weight.
10 reps.
Who's he play for?
One of the teams in NCAA.
Oh, okay. College. He's in college.
I think he played. No, he played for Virginia Tech actually, because I remember looking at the bumper plates having the VT logo on there.
Okay.
605, 10 reps.
That's a lot of weight. That's a lot of weight.
Boy, I can't do that once.
There was somebody when I was down at camp, and it was not like the wide receiver room, but it was like, oh, so-and-so is the strongest player in our room. And then they asked him what he squats, and like his like 1 rep max was like 600.
Dude did it 10 times, Kyle.
10 times it. That's
10 times.
Yeah,
that was
you, me, and probably one other decently sized human being.
Couple Chris Schuberts.
A handful of Chris Schuberts. Good to hear from Chris yesterday.
Yeah.
You shot us a text, so shout out Chris.
All right.
Kickoff. We're going there.
Dude, so yes, we got to talk kickoff today. I was at a family cookout last Saturday in Buffalo. And instead of talking about the upcoming Bills team, my uncle's a Patriots fan. We didn't talk about Drake May. We didn't talk about anything like that. We talked about the kickoff rule. That is what everybody was talking about. And I feel like, we both get a lot of questions from listeners of our podcast and stuff. And I feel like there's so much banter around the kickoff rule. And the objective today for Kyle and I is not to break down the kickoff rule and tell you what's different. Our objective is to tell you what we're going to do. And I think that's what everybody's wondering. What are teams going to do? How is this going to impact roster decisions? What do the blocking schemes look like? What do the returners look like? What do the kickers look like? And so I'm ready to just kind of empty my brain and see how you see it and talk this through. And I guess we'll find out soon enough what the league's going to do. I'm sure it's going to be fluid. It's probably going to be week to week, but the teams that can embrace this and use it to their advantage are going to have a big advantage this coming season.
Can I say something as a that's going to out me as a coward here?
Of course. Anything that would out you as a coward that you say by yourself, I'm here for.
The incentive, the punishment for just putting the ball out of the back of the end zone is not severe enough for me.
You're supposed to save that for the end, Kyle Krabs.
I would just put the ball out of the back of the end zone every play and let you start on the 30. It's a 5-yard difference from a touchback, right?
Yeah. I am a fan of a team, the Bills, that didn't do that under the previous rules, right? A lot of teams would say, okay, here's the 25, let's play football. The Bills were a team that said, nah, here's a return.
We're shoot a field the
We're
kick
gonna,
and block and execute.
And a lot of the time it worked, and drives were starting at the 15 or the 20, right? Like regularly.
Mhm.
And I liked that about the Bills. Am I nervous? Yeah, man, I'm nervous. And I wonder if we get to that point where teams say, here's the 30, we're not dealing with it.
So Danny Crossman, the Dolphins special teams coordinator, had press availability on Thursday before I left last week. And he talked about one of the biggest things about the rule and its changes, where the kicking team lines up 10 guys on the 40. The kicker still kicks off from your own 35, but everybody else is on the plus 40. You've got 9 guys that are between the 35 and the 30. So you're separated by between 5 and 10 yards. He said, all of the air is taken out of this play. It's a very fast and rapid happening play now.
Mm-hmm.
And the margin for error as a result is much more narrow to prevent an explosive play, because it's almost like you really have one line of defense all the way across the field. Now, not everybody has to charge and attack forward. You can have guys that hang back to try to emulate the spacing. But one of the biggest things, and it gets into kickers and types of kicks, is nobody can move until the ball is fielded or the ball touches the ground. And that's, for me, like, you have such an advantage if you can figure out how to kick it down with not a traditional kick that is allowed to be fielded immediately by the player to start the play. Because it happens so fast. You, as the kicking team, the best way for you to get some of that time back is the ball hits the ground before it is fielded by the returner.
Yeah, and I think that's what gets us into the initial part of the conversation of, like, okay, kickers and the types of kicks that they can use. If you can do that, I think that's huge. I think that's difficult, though.
Yes, because I've if it lands short of the 20, you're losing 10 plus yards of field position.
Right. So Dave Toub, head special teams coach for the Chiefs, he said a couple of weeks ago that his estimation is that between 25 and 40% of all kicks, the kicker's involved in the tackle, not necessarily making the tackle, but whether it's leveraging the ball or having to make the tackle, there's going to be a higher level of kicker involvement. And so that's led to a lot of conversation about, well, can you use a position player to kick? Because hang time doesn't matter, right? That's no longer a relevant part of a kick. Well, so would you just got to get to land between the goal line and the 20. Would you want to use a position player? And I think there's advantages to that, because that player is going to give you a better chance to make a tackle. But I think the onus then becomes on your coverage unit to not allow that kicker to make the tackle. I think it's really important that the person that's kicking has more options with the ball, because while hang time doesn't matter, I think you still want them to catch it as close to the goal line as possible, obviously, because then they have more distance to cover before they can gain yards. And I think that gives you more opportunity to disrupt the blocking scheme. So I think it's fun to consider the idea of a non-kicker kicking because of the possibility of tackling, but I think you need the options and control of the ball. And I still think you want to be directionally sound. The best defensive player in the whole world is the sideline. It's unbelievable, dude. Never misses a tackle. It's an unbelievable player. You want to be able to push as much of that as possible to the sideline. You don't want middle of the field kicks where there's two-way goes and everything. So I do think that's the control of the football still matters a ton when you get into this conversation.
I cannot imagine the value and the 25 to 40% statistic that was with the old kickoff rules.
No, that's his estimation on this new kickoff.
His estimation with this. Got it.
Yeah.
The risk, what's more likely to give you an explosive? The kicker being involved in the tackle in, on average, 1 out of every 3 kicks, if we're going to land in the middle of those 2 percentages that he gave you, or a bad kick that doesn't go where it's supposed to go or land where it's supposed to land, or go the direction it's supposed to go, or heaven forbid you kick it out of bounds so it goes to the 40 without any play at all. It's just the risk, I think, for a non-full-time player whose responsibility is to be a special teams player who understands the science of how that works, does not match the reward for me. I'd be fascinated to see. Oh, is it Justin Reed?
Yeah.
Is that?
Of course. Of course, that's the player they have, right?
Right. No,
The
that must be
safety.
nice, Dave.
Right. Right.
Kicker, punter. Let your kicker, punter do it.
Well, and you've obviously, we both have been to a lot of practices, NFL practices, and respectfully, kickers got time. They got time to work on it, right?
They
They do. They got the time. Your other players don't. They don't have time for that. So it's a cool idea, but I still think you want the kicker kicking the ball. Now, if you could do like the knuckle kicks and get it to land, and like you mentioned, that's huge. But I'm in on the regular kicker handling these kicking duties, and it sounds like you are as well.
Yes.
All right, coming up on the other side of it, Kyle and I are going to talk about the returners, like what stylistically you're looking for in terms of those traits and the blocking schemes. Be sure to stick with us. Folks, the NFL schedule is here. The season is here. I know you want to get to these games. Well, if you do, then you got to download the Game Time app. Game Time is the fast and easy way to purchase tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. I love this app. It's easy to navigate. They give you a ton of great deals on last-minute tickets, flash deals. They give you a seat image so you know exactly what to expect when you get to the venue. And my favorite part is the all-in pricing. You can choose to look at the prices as all-in, so that way you have no surprises coming at the end of the transaction. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL. That's LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
So, returners and schemes. This gets into some of the flexibility that the return team has, where you can have within the landing zone, there's 2 designated players that can line up anywhere in there at your discretion, whether that's like a lead blocker and a primary returner. If you want to go 2 threats to return, you can do that as well to cover more horizontal space. What are your thoughts?
Okay, so this, I might have to take an L on this because and this is, again, the objective here is to tell you what we would do. Okay,
Yep.
So I want to tell you that I'm not going to take an L. I'm going to tell you what I would do. I would be mostly interested in using running backs to be my kick returner because, as you mentioned, this is far less of an open field play. The air is kind of taken out. And I think these plays are going to resemble a lot of different run plays. And we'll get into those schemes in just a moment. And because of that, I would want the vision and the contact balance, which you're typically going to find in a running back. So for me, those were the types of players that I would want to do. Now, what's interesting is I also got a chance to hear the Bills special teams coordinator, Matthew Smiley, talk about this. And he said that what's that? Yeah, all smiles. Yeah, all smiles all the time. He said kick returners will look more like punt returners because of the less high-speed collisions. And I'm like, well, that doesn't line up with what I'm thinking here, Coach Smiley. So, you know, that's his thoughts on it. Now, I saw the players that he used in practice, and I wouldn't say that there's any consistency with the skill sets. I mean, anyone from Mac Hollins to Andy Isabella or doing
Hollins doing punts.
Kick returns. Yeah, Mac Hollins. Returns. Yeah, and KJ Hamler's back there. Ray Davis is back there. Ty Johnson. I mean, like, okay, dude, you got everybody, every imaginable skill set back there.
Right.
But point being, for me, I would want those running back traits to show up in the players that I have. Now, I'd love to have speed. Like, you'd love to have speed, contact, balance, and vision. But I probably would want mostly contact, balance, and vision.
Right. So I think for me, I would want to make use of that second player, that utility player in some way, whether there's some kind of misdirection, You know, like you have the only place that the space exists on these kickoffs is between the two players in the landing zone and everybody else. So I would want to have speed, and I would want to invoke something that tries to tear the return team. And that would be part of my strategy in trying to get plays to pop. Because if you just have one guy and he's got speed and you get a primary blocker out in front of him, by the time you catch the ball and field it, it's kind of boxed in around you, and it's still leveraged across the full width of the field. But your opportunity is everybody is so much more closer together that if you can create a crease somehow, that's where I think you really have the chance to pop some stuff off. So I would be experimenting with a lot of speed at both return spots, and then hoping to have misdirection account for a player in my blocking scheme to kind of put that player in conflict.
I think it's going to be really hard for these players on the return team that are blocking to sustain those blocks, right? Like that's just a very, very difficult job. And it's interesting because I hate that I can't remember who wrote the article, but a couple of weeks ago, somebody put out an article and it was fantastic. They had scouted all the XFL kicks and charted all this data. And in part of that article, they mentioned that the XFL teams experimented with using offensive linemen. And they're like, they just weren't quick enough. They weren't quick enough, and they couldn't sustain those blocks long enough. And so that, to me, because I feel like there's going to be a lot of like compromised blocking and free runners, if you will, that is somehow either being able like to make you miss, but like how a guy can make you miss, there's so many different ways, but I think that's going to be part of it. And so is the speed and breaking pursuit angles, it's always helpful, right? It's always helpful, but I also want to be able to kind of have some contact balance through that as well.
And that's the trait that I think makes, like, if you had to pick somebody who you think would be like an elite kick returner with the new rules. Regardless of what their workload looks like on offense or defense.
Yeah. Like Bijan Robinson, right? Like
Debo.
Oh, yeah, good call. Yeah.
Like supersized player still with speed.
Yeah.
Like that's the kind of, because traditionally kickoff, particularly the guys on the perimeter, it's corners, it's wide receivers, it's running backs, it's guys that can run really fast and get all the way down there. I think that's the biggest area and shift is probably your perimeter kick coverage guys. You'll probably see more linebackers and tight ends and big safeties now in some more of those spots to kind of still have a physicality element that's not wide receivers or corners playing out there. But if anybody still wants to run out corners to play perimeter contain on these drills, imagine trying to tackle Debo one-on-one in space, right? Like it's just, that's going to be really hard. And that's where I agree with you wholeheartedly. An element of contact balance in addition to speed to stress based on how you're choosing if you have one guy back there is where I think you really have the potential for electric, because all the kickoffs that we've seen in this format so far, again, there's kind of one line of defense within 5 to 8 yards. And that's like the whole coverage range. And but it goes all the way across the field.
Yeah.
And if you can break that singular line of defense, then you're off and running.
All right, I'm excited to kind of talk blocking schemes and the different options. So let's do that and talk about how this rule is going to influence roster decisions on the other side of it, folks. Be sure to stick with us. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals that you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't even visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours, and 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. So hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply.
I kind of let the cat out of the bag there a little bit as far as guys I think you'll see more of on kickoff team.
You left some meat on the bone. So
okay,
let's get to that. But I can we do blocking schemes?
Sure.
What do you think, man? Like, I think there's so much opportunity for creativity here, but what we kind of already talked about was like sustaining blocks is going to be difficult. So how do you put those guys in position to be most successful? Like, what are your thoughts there?
Well, can you run trap on guys? Can
100%,
like effectively like pulling in space and try and like reverse engineer the wall by there's guys that run through and based on the returner's angle and guys that are inside kind of press out, and then maybe you try to wash down and create your wall that way. Again, that's for me. I would want to have some element of one guy fields and then there's another guy kind of looping around it. You can kind of get a call for who's going to make the catch, and then the other guy, it's going to go left or right. You make a call, and the guy who's not catching it, there's some kind of timing up to run around it and kind of force everybody on the kickoff team to make a decision. And can you use that based off of your call to who can you pull out of alignment and then try to like trap and wham or seal those players?
I like so much of that, especially if kicks are going to be directional and they want to reduce the field. Okay, cool. Well, I'm not going to sit there and be overly concerned about blocking a guy that's 50 yards away from the ball.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I think how you can create those walls and how you can create angles for your blockers is going to put them in positions to be most successful. I struggle with the idea of just kind of manning it up just because I think it's going to be hard for, I mean, dude, you can't hold that block for that long. It's just not, and I'm sure there's going to be a whole lot of discipline required on the defensive side to like stay in your lane and not create gaps and lanes for the returner. But you gotta give these blockers a chance to get them out of that, or they're going to try to be disciplined with their fits.
Can I float another galaxy brain idea out there too?
That's why we're here, brother.
You got two guys in the landing zone. Can you option off of somebody?
Oh boy. Sure.
Just
sure
automatically be like, we're not blocking. Everybody's blocking down. We're
so
running
let this guy
left.
run free.
We're going to leave the end man unblocked, and both return guys kind of ride along the thing, and you've got a pitch option.
If you're willing to do it.
I can't imagine you'd see that in an actual game unless it's like desperate times, desperate measures type thing.
I mean, that's only because Josh Allen's not going to be doing any kick returns. He's going to pitch that ball.
Or was it Kelsey?
Kelsey's doing it, but these guys aren't doing kick returns, man. Put Kelsey in. I don't even remember who he threw that ball back to.
It wasn't Tony, was it? Canaries kind of blew the play up.
His foot was on the line, or took away greatness. But
offensive offside, so well. Yeah, they give the audacity of him to make that call. But yeah, I think there's a lot of creativity that you can see with it, and that's why for me, since I was supposed to save this for the end of the show, all of that adds up to me. It says if I could just give up an extra 5 yards and boot it into the third row, I'm going to do that.
But I don't know. Like, I think I would probably do that until it costs me. I wouldn't do that until it costs me because I would be.
You don't want to be the first. You don't want to be the first guy to lose a game on that.
I hear you on that, but it's like, I mean, I'm not diminishing anyone's intelligence, but I mean, your average, there's a correlation between average starting field position and your likelihood of scoring points. Like,
right.
I want you to go as far as possible to have to score. And if I feel like I can stop you well before the 30, I'm going to put myself in position to do that.
Sure. Which is based in part on the composition of your kickoff.
Sure. So let's get into that. And the one thing, and you kind of tease some of this, I think a position that I would have a big appetite for trying out strategically on these kick coverage is I want to use edge players. I mean, edge players, what do they do? Like, they set edges, they maintain leverage, they disengage, they make those types of tackles.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, you're not putting like a 6'5", 280-pound defensive end out there, but kind of your hybrids, your 3-4 rush linebackers, those types of guys, I think, are going to have an opportunity here. And I think you want to be selective with where you place them. But if you can kind of have
the core, right?
Yeah, exactly. But
yeah.
I wonder if the biggest place where you see teams kind of find more appetite for going heavy with roster is, okay, those types of pass rushers.
Because there's already an inherent value in
right
carrying pass rushers to rush the passer.
Right. Now they can do this. Like, you're start keeping 5-6 of these.
I don't know, dude. We've seen some teams carry 3 linebackers on a 53-man roster.
I can't imagine. Like off ball, you think?
Yeah. I can't imagine anybody doesn't have a stack off ball linebacker that's at least a 4th guy, but makes your 53. If anybody carries 3 stack linebackers this year with the kickoff rules, I would be stunned.
Yeah, I'm stunned to think anybody would do that, but
would carry 3.
Yeah.
They did it last year.
I think 5's like the minimum I would have, because I mean, even in traditional special teams plays, those guys matter. Those are kind of the guys you want.
And there were a lot of teams that had 4 last year. I think that minimum threshold is at least 4, and for most probably 5.
The Bills always roster 6, so this is a little bit blowing my mind here.
Yep, you're different, but that's because you guys actually force teams to field the kicks.
There you go. There you go. You're not wrong, right? You're not wrong about that. Yeah, and I think size is going to matter too, right? Like, bigger safeties, tight ends, bigger receivers. I think those guys are going to have an opportunity here to be attractive for these types of plays, where I think the size is going to matter, because it isn't as much of an open play, and you are going to have to be physical and disengage. There's not going to be as many full speed, collisions and that type of stuff, but your ability to be physical in space and get off blocks and make tackles is going to be important. And I think some of your undersized corners and undersized safeties, they might have a tougher time sticking around, and some of those bigger guys are going to have more opportunity.
So there's a name that you're very familiar with that I'm getting to know. It's Siran Neal.
Yeah.
And he was asked.
It'll be helpful for this.
He was asked if the new kickoff rules, he had to learn anything. And he said, man, if you played football for any period of time, or if you as a kid played throw 'em up and shuck 'em up, this is all par for the course in beat a guy for a block and go get the football and make a tackle.
Yeah.
And I think guys like that are career teams guys have more value. I don't know where the economic benefit comes in there, because that's kind of the next stage of this once we get a better idea of roster value and how easy guys are to find and manufacture that are really impactful on these plays, as compared to these are the body types we want based on the requisite skills that we perceive are needed to successfully cover a kick. How big is that sample size of guys? And Siran was a cap casualty for you guys last year. And Miami got him pretty cheap, but it's like, okay, what's the new floor for designated special teams guys? And how many guys do you think because every team's getting ready to go through this process. You got 90, 91 guys on the roster. You got to cut to 53. And you always get a peek at this with Hard Knocks, right? All the coaching staff sits down and has the conversations. How long is the list for the special teams coordinator this year? How many guys do they have to be like, I need this many guys?
Yeah.
Because it's larger than what it was for forever.
Yeah. Well, to kind of point to some of the money that's going to be there for special teamers, before the kickoff rule existed, the Bills are a team that have a lot of appetite for paying special teams players. They played Tyler Matakevich, who's had a long career in the NFL, and not because he can play a lick of defense. 2-year, $7.1 million deal that signed in 2020. Siran Neal signed a 3-year, $9 million contract as a guy that doesn't play a lick of defense for the Bills and special teams. Like, you're talking $3-4 million a year. Like, these aren't minimum. These aren't, and they're guys that really from scrimmage haven't had a role. And so, I mean, if you can be good at this.
My team has had experience of that guy with guys who haven't been successful, but that was they were getting $4.5 million. Ethan Carter at tight end, Clayton Fejedelem at safety, and he was like personal protector on punt team and kickoff return, and that's all he did. And he was getting $4 million a season, and for 3 years we sat at Keon Crossman. Keon Crossman got a $3.5 million deal, didn't play for 2 years. But was injured and kept collecting checks. Like, does that number go up? Especially with the spike in, if you get a true, what would prime Matthew Slater get?
Oh gosh, he might be a $5
or $6 million player.
Yeah.
So
hey, folks, learn how to
defeat blocks and tackle in space.
Yeah. I mean, if you're not going to be a left-handed pitcher in Major League Baseball, right? If you're not going to be a quarterback or a left-handed pitcher, you might as well learn how to do that.
Right. And you don't need the speed that you used to. I think 4.8 athletes are a lot more kosher for this now.
I was born too soon. Had a chance here.
Right. It's a shame.
Yeah.
That's going to do it for us here on Locked On NFL Scouting. Look at the new kickoff rule and dynamics for rosters across the league. Really fascinating change that we'll see unfold this season. And I'm sure we'll have plenty of commentary when the first big one happens. And we'll have plenty of commentary all preseason long up until the start of the regular season. You can find us on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Make it a great rest of your day. We're out of here.